Sometimes the most dangerous being in existence isn't the one who never worshipped. It's the one who worshipped so much that he began to believe he was more worthy than the command of God. Before humanity was created, before the earth witnessed its first sin, there was a being who stood among the worshippers. Some traditions called him Azazel, but the Quran gives him another name, Iblis. He wasn't a monster born from darkness. He wasn't God's eternal enemy. He was a creature with free will, and that free will would ultimately make him one of the most terrifying examples of a fall from grace. His downfall began with a single sentence, "I am better than him." In that moment, worship became arrogance, devotion became pride, and closeness to God turned into rejection. But Iblis was not destroyed. Instead, he asked for more time. And from that moment on, a war began, a war whose battlefield would not be the heavens, but the hearts and minds of human beings. Tonight, we're not simply going to talk about the devil. We're going to uncover the story of a being who once stood among the closest worshippers, and who eventually swore to lead humanity astray until the end of time. And here's the question: if Azazel could fall, how far are we from falling ourselves? Before humanity ever set foot on Earth, this planet had already witnessed another story. According to the Quran, the jinn were created before mankind, beings made from what is described as smokeless fire. They had no physical form like ours. They could exist without being seen. Even the word jinn carries the meaning of something hidden, concealed from sight. But there was one thing that made them different from angels. They had free will. They could choose obedience or rebellion. Some traditional interpretations tell of a time when the jinn lived upon the earth for a very long period. They multiplied. They formed their own communities. Their numbers grew. But free will without restraint slowly turned competition into conflict, and conflict into corruption, until violence and bloodshed spread across the earth. Long before humanity appeared, the earth may have already witnessed the consequences of rebellion. According to some Islamic narrations, groups of angels were commanded by God to confront the rebellious jinn and restore order to the earth. In a way, it resembles the stories of ancient human nations such as Ad and Thamud, peoples who, according to the Quran, were eventually destroyed after defying God. The angels carried out their mission. The rebellion was crushed, and order was restored. But the memory of that rebellion remained, and this is where one name begins to emerge from the ancient stories: Azazel. He was a jinn, created from the same smokeless fire as the others. But unlike many of his kind, he chose a different path. While others turned toward rebellion and disobedience, Azazel devoted himself to worship. Some narrations describe him as having spent countless years in obedience to God, eventually becoming one of the most distinguished among the jinn. And when the angels were sent to confront the rebellious jinn, some traditional accounts say that Azazel accompanied them, not as an angel, but as a jinn who had become exceptional in his obedience. He fought alongside them and helped defeat the rebellious jinn. And that victory changed something inside him. Slowly, his devotion began to feed something far more dangerous: his ego. A thought began to grow within him. I accomplished what no one else could. And that thought became the first spark of pride, the first spark of arrogance. According to later narrations, Azazel's worship eventually elevated him to the heavens. He learned among the angels and was given access to realms that other jinn could never reach. Some sources even associate the name Azazel with meanings such as the honored one of God, suggesting a position of great closeness and status. But there is one crucial detail we must not overlook. The Quran never calls Azazel an angel. In fact, when it later speaks about Iblis, it explicitly identifies him as being from the jinn. And that distinction matters, because unlike the angels, he possessed something they did not: the freedom to choose. At this moment, the universe appeared to have reached a fragile balance. The earth had been cleansed of widespread rebellion among the jinn. The angels remained in complete obedience, and Azazel stood at an extraordinary height of honor. But beneath that perfect-looking balance, something was about to change, because this was only the beginning of a much greater test. The creation of Adam was not a simple announcement. God willed to create a being from dust, a being entrusted with reason, free will, and responsibility. The earth had already witnessed the rebellion of the jinn, and now it was about to become the home of an entirely new creation. The angels asked, "Will you place upon it one who will cause corruption and shed blood?" Their question was not without reason. They had witnessed what had happened before. The earth had already known chaos and destruction. But God's answer established the boundary between what they knew and what they did not. I know what you do not know. Those words reveal a profound difference between the infinite knowledge of God and the limited understanding of the angels. The angels could see only the possibility of corruption and bloodshed. But God knew something far deeper about humanity. He had placed within this new creation the ability to learn, the power to choose, and a potential that would later be revealed through the teaching of the names. And then, everything changed. Among the angels was a being who had spent countless years in their company. His name, according to later traditions, was Azazel. He watched as God announced the creation of a being formed from dust. Dust, an element completely different from fire, and that difference planted the seed of comparison within him. God formed the human body from clay, then he breathed into it from his spirit. And suddenly a new creation stood before them, a being made from the earth, yet honored with a divine breath. The creation of Adam was complete. Then came the command, bow before Adam. This was not a test of what they were made from. It was a test of obedience. The angels bowed, every one of them, but one being remained standing, the one who had spent so long among them, the one known in certain traditions as Azazel. He refused to bow. Now, before we continue, there is something important you should know. In a previous video, I also mentioned the name Azazel, but the name appears in other traditions as well, and the stories surrounding it are not identical. In some traditions, Azazel is described as a rebellious angel who descended from heaven and taught humanity forbidden knowledge, including the knowledge of weapons. Because of this, he was punished and, according to those traditions, chained beneath the earth until the day of judgment. But that is a different story. Here, we are following the figure described in the Quran as Iblis, a jinn who fell because of his arrogance. So let us return to our story. When Iblis was asked what had prevented him from bowing, his answer revealed everything. I am better than him. Then he explained, you created me from fire, and you created him from clay. And in those words, something far more dangerous was born, the foundation of a profound error. Iblis did not deny God. He did not reject the existence of his creator. He even acknowledged that Adam had been created by God. His mistake was something different. He judged worth by the material of creation. He compared fire with clay and decided that one must be superior to the other. It was one of the earliest and most consequential acts of false comparison in the story of creation. And in that very moment, the Azazel of tradition became the Iblis of the Quran, a new name for a completely new destiny. The word Iblis is commonly connected to the root ablasa, associated with despair, hopelessness, and being cut off from hope in God's mercy. And from this moment onward, the story of humanity would never be the same. After refusing the command to bow, Satan was expected to be cast out and destroyed, but he did not accept his fate. Instead, he asked for a reprieve. According to some accounts, he used his long history of worship as the basis for his request. His argument was essentially this: give me time until the day of judgment, and I will prove that this creature made from dust is not as worthy of honor as you claim. His request was granted, but with limits, because Satan was also meant to play a role in the test of humanity. He was never given absolute power over human beings. He can approach them, he can whisper to them, he can tempt them, but he cannot force them. His influence only reaches as far as a person allows it to. For example, Satan cannot force someone to commit a sin, but if that person chooses to do it, Satan can tempt them, encourage them, and make the act seem easier or more appealing. In a way, that is where Satan's real power lies, in the whisper. He targets the mind, not the body. And that's what makes the story even more disturbing. Satan was not destroyed because he was meant to have a role in humanity's test, but his existence was never meant to last forever. He was given time only until the day of judgment. And what happens after that? How will Satan finally meet his end? And what role will the angel of death Azrael play in it? We'll come back to that later. But now another question begins to emerge. How did Satan's mission actually begin? And who was his very first target? After receiving his reprieve, Satan chose his very first targets, Adam and Eve. Adam and his wife were placed in paradise, a place where nothing was lacking. The command was simple: enjoy everything you find here, except for one tree. And that was where Satan entered the story. But not through force. The Quran says that he whispered to them. He asked, "Shall I lead you to the tree of immortality?" And then he offered something even greater. Would you like a kingdom that will never fade away? He swore that he was only giving them sincere advice. He presented himself as a friend, as someone who wanted what was best for them. And that was the moment everything changed. Because Adam and Eve had a choice. They ate from the tree, and with that single act, something was revealed. Their vulnerability became visible to them. Paradise was no longer the same. Then came the command, go down. Their expulsion from paradise marked the beginning of humanity's life on earth. And Satan came down as well. But from this point on, his mission entered an entirely new stage. He was no longer dealing with just two human beings. He was dealing with generations of humanity. He would make sin appear beautiful. He would make false promises. He would create hatred and division between people. And his influence would reach even the stories of the prophets. When Moses was sent to confront Pharaoh, fear and doubt spread among the people. The magicians, the displays of power, the confusion surrounding what was true and what was false, these became opportunities through which Satan's influence could operate. And during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, his approach took another form, creating doubt, spreading division, whispering into the hearts of the hypocrites, and making the promises of God seem small or distant. Words designed to shake people's hearts. But beneath all of these methods was the same strategy. Change the way people see things, make the wrong path look right, make fear look like wisdom, make temptation look like freedom, and make doubt feel like truth. But the story does not end there. Satan has been given respite until the day of judgment. The Quran does not give us an exact description of the moment he will die. But one thing is clear, he is not immortal. Some Islamic narrations state that when the trumpet is blown by the angel Israfil, and the time comes for the creatures of the heavens and the earth to die, Satan's end will come as well. In these narrations, the angel of death, known in Islamic tradition as Azrael, is sent to take his soul. The being who spent ages whispering into the hearts of humanity, the being who once believed himself superior, would finally stand before an angel carrying the final command. Some narrations describe Satan attempting to flee, but there is nowhere left to go. No earth remains for him to hide upon. No sky remains for him to escape into. His time has finally run out. Other narrations even describe him reaching the grave of Adam and letting out a scream of absolute despair, a scream said to be heard by the people gathered on the day of judgment. But there is something important to remember. The Quran does not describe these details. These scenes come from later narrations, and they should not be presented as established Quranic fact. What is certain is this: Satan is not eternal, and on the day of judgment, he will be held accountable. His ultimate destination, and the destination of those who followed him, is described as the fire, and when that day comes, Satan will turn away from the very people who followed him. He will make it clear that he never truly had power over them. He only called them, and they answered. The same being who once declared, "I am better than him," will eventually stand in a place where he cannot defend himself, cannot escape, and cannot save even himself. The one who spent his existence trying to mislead humanity will finally face the consequences of his own choice. And the conclusion is clear. In Islam, Satan is not a force equal to God. He is a being who fell because of his arrogance, was granted a period of respite, tempted humanity, and will ultimately be held accountable. His power was limited, and his end is certain. A story that began with a comparison ultimately ends with a judgment. But one major question remains: is Satan portrayed in the same way in Christianity? Or does a very different figure emerge from that tradition? In the next episode, we turn our attention to Satan in Christianity, from the Bible itself to centuries of historical interpretation, to uncover how his image evolved and what lies on the other side of this dark narrative. If you found this series fascinating and different from the usual content, make sure to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell if you want to continue this dark and mysterious journey with us. And as always, thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of this journey. Until we meet again, goodbye.